BuildAid is so proud to be part of this amazing, bustling city of gold. Come behind the scenes with us as we explore what really goes into the development, refurbishment and creation of this incredible city we call home. From past to present, we look at what makes Jozi unique and what the future holds. On Building Joburg on Mix this week, we chat to Dr. Llewelyn Lewis about the economics of the building industry, and we highlight the Radium Beer Hall as one of Joburg's oldest and best-known pubs.
BuildAid on Mix 93.8 FM. Good evening. My name's Graham Alexander. Kirsten and Simon in the studio as usual, and Ian looking after the videography. I'm going to be chatting to Dr. Llewelyn Lewis this evening. We're going to be talking about the economy, the building industry, is it growing, what's happening, how many houses have we built, and so on. And Kay is going to be having some fun with a question.
Yeah, so Simon went jolling on Saturday night. Now that he's got a cool tattoo, he's out on the town. For a change, eh? And anyway, he landed up at Jozi's oldest pub. It's rich in history and one of the city's oldest suburbs. You've probably been there more than once, and if you haven't, you need to go. Do you know which Jill we're talking about? I'm going to give you clues a little bit later on, but if you know which pub, the oldest one in Joburg, that Simon was at on Saturday night, send us an SMS on 41348.
BuildAid on Mix 93.8. Remember, we've got this Facebook page set up called Building Joburg on Mix. So when we chat about the pictures we refer to and so on are on this page. We also need your input. So if you've got some stuff, put it on the page. Building Joburg on Mix. My guest this evening, Dr. Llewelyn Lewis. Llewelyn, thank you so much for coming to chat to us.
Pleasure.
It's been a while, and welcome back.
About a year.
And it's always a pleasure chatting to you. Llewelyn, your company BIM, Building Research Strategy Consultant Unit. Tell us what you do.
That stands for Business and Marketing Intelligence, Building Research Strategy Consulting Unit. I wanted to kind of have a sentence and a name, so it was actually describing what I do. And as a matter of fact, I do building research. I track all the published data, make sense of them historically and in the current reality, and then project forward. And I also do strategy consulting, and I do leadership reinvention and organizational reinvention, but not to any great extent. It's just that those last three are really passions of mine. But the building industry, I have a database that I've developed over many years, and it's a database that I can navigate very easily and get information, and I sell that as a service to clients.
BuildAid brought to you by AfriSam. I'm chatting to Dr. Llewelyn Lewis. We're talking about the economy and this amazing industry, the building industry. We're also going to be chatting about Joburg later on, and you can get it all on Building Joburg on Mix, our Facebook page. Llewelyn, the economy. And a question that you probably asked very often is, how is it doing? And I know it would probably take 2 hours to answer that properly. But just to give us an idea and the impact on the building industry.
Well, the economy is, of course, well described and researched by the Reserve Bank and the Treasury and Stats SA. And so let's call it my forecasting flow chart, starts with the big numbers. In other words, I accept that the Reserve Bank and the Treasury know what they're doing, and they give the forecast of GDP and gross fixed capital formation, and also for gross fixed capital formation, residential, non-residential, and construction. So in other words, those are known numbers. And we also have known numbers which are buildings completed and plans passed. So when you put all of this together, you can get a good sense of the investment table, and you link it, in other words, to known forecasts and derive the building industry's performance from that.
Yeah, we've got to be careful as South Africans not to live in a bubble. we're part of a much, much bigger picture.
Absolutely.
And easy to point fingers and say we're in trouble. It's the result of a whole lot of other complicated issues. With regard to housing and the commitment to building millions of homes, on that front, how are we doing, Llewelyn?
Look, you know, I was chairman of the National Association of Home Builders. And way back in 1990, I came back from America and they were building, I think it was 1 million houses a year. And I said, we must build 1 million houses in the next 10 years. And we had a wonderful conference, but the then government never even asked us, you know, can we help you? Is there anything we can do? They didn't. But then in 1994, the ANC got into power and they said, we're going to build 1 million houses in 5 years. And they did. And I can tell you something, the housing program is probably, you know, it's unmatched anywhere in the world. They've delivered a lot of houses. And I would say from 120,000 a year to 200,000 a year. But there is a huge population growing fast, and of course we need to build 500,000 houses a year for the next 5 years to make a dent in the backlog. And that's the reality.
A subject that we've got onto many times on the show, and we had Musa from Corra Brick, who's the chairman of the Clay Brick Association, would enjoy this discussion on whether we build homes with bricks or we fast build homes, do we create jobs, and so on. This is BuildAid on Mix 93.8. I'm chatting to Dr. Llewelyn Lewis. We're talking the economy, the building industry, building houses, and so on. We have a map here in the studio. Now, we have this Facebook page that you really should go and visit. It's called Building Joburg on Mix. And we put up all the pictures of what we talk about, Uncle Charlie's Roadhouse, the pub that we're talking about tonight, or Kay has out there is a question. I'm sure we'll have a whole lot of pics up there tomorrow or the next day, including this map. And Dave Gurney, our heritage specialist, he's not with us here in the studio this evening, but I know he's out there listening, and he sent us a whole lot of info. It's probably too much info, Dave, so we'll do a show on it. But this map, it's quite fascinating. It's I don't know which year it was actually produced, but it shows how the different suburbs grew from the centre of Joburg over the last century. So you pick up Parkhurst in 1904 and out towards Edenvale in 1896 and so on. But let's not stick to the map too much because this is radio and you can't see it. It's a discussion around what we were talking about just now, which is urbanization. It's bringing people back into the city. And Llewelyn, the city originally was never a residential hub. It was a commercial hub. And that's changing. So people are moving into spaces that have been converted from industrial space or commercial space into residence. And Simon's joined us, because Simon's one of our Joburg gurus and our architect, and he runs a desk every week. And we want to chat about this urbanization and the industry and suppliers. We talked about roof tiles. If I sold roof tiles, I'd want to know about this urbanization because it may have an impact on the number of tiles I'm going to sell in the next 10 years. And your comments on that kind of information, I know your unit, your company, Llewelyn, as you said at the start of the show, is very involved in being in touch with information that some people might not understand.
Well, it's not rocket science, that's for sure. You know, the information is there and, you know, you analyze it and, you know, you get the hard data and it tells you a story. You know, as I said, dwellings less than 80 square meters are still the most accommodation being built, and those are individual houses. And then flats and townhouses, bearing in mind that there's a lot of clusters and cluster living going on, and, you know, the kind of walled towns, and it's very popular because there's security and there's a sense of having a garden and that kind of thing. And so it's almost an imitation of what people used to. But people no longer want large stands with gardens and maintenance and that kind of thing. So, there is the migration to these flats. And of course, young people today, they want to be mobile. And I mean, they want to say it's a kind of a lock up and go for that mobility. But on the other hand, it's also a case when you get a job in Cape Town, you don't want to be held down by your home. And so, therefore, again, there's a kind of a preference for rental. And of course, the lock up and go kind of idea is very popular for that reason.
The other thing is, if we say 1 million people are moving into the city, doesn't necessarily mean that those 1 million people can afford even a flat. And we've had some experts on the show. Stephen Nasu comes to mind, a couple of architects, town planners, where some of the development in the city, people are living 5 to a room. And now, whether that's acceptable or not for another show, but and it's about density and so on. But these people can't afford to buy flats and that. So sometimes we can't get our figures skewed by the population.
Yeah, I mean, we've been extensively involved in the rehabilitation of distressed buildings in town. And the trend nowadays is to put up or to convert these old office buildings into 2 bedrooms, 2 bathroom units. And that is purely so that 2 young professionals can share the unit, whether they buy it, whether they rent it. And each person then has their own private room and their own private bathroom space. And that's a huge winner. And, you're getting a 2 bedroom, 2 bathroom kitchen lounge area in the space of about 55, 60 squares.
We were looking at the GOAD maps that Dave Gurney showed us some weeks ago. Now, GOAD map it's something produced by a engineer called Charles Goad, and he drew up the whole of Joburg. And when you got into a block, you'd say, this is Sam's plumbing supply, and this is a timber yard. They're fascinating. You can go to Wits University archives and actually download these maps. So if you're interested in, they're huge files, so go download them. They're a lot of fun. But what comes out of those maps is like hostels. So you have 10 rooms and a shower, bathroom facility, and a kitchen facility.
Yeah.
Is there room for that kind of development?
From our side, we found that the hostel situation works pretty well with students, but outside of the student realm, it's pretty difficult to sell. And when I say sell, whether you're selling them on or renting them or whatever, it's a hard sell to get people to use those spaces. But for students, it's a big winner, and we're doing a lot of buildings in town with regards to that conversion module like that.
Something else that could help with that identity, and we've touched on this a couple of times on this show, is planting trees and gardens, and that can change the face of what would normally be an ordinary home.
Well, it takes 20 years for the tree to grow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you buy a home, and that's what I did 37 years ago, Sandown 24, there wasn't a tree or a blade of grass on that area because that was Grayston Stables. The school is still called Grayston Road. Is a consequence of that, and then in 20 years, you look across from there to Morningside or across to Sandown 24, and you see the trees. You look at Saxonwold. I mean, It's an amazing forest.
Apparently, one of the biggest man-made forests. Kay, how did we do with the question?
Okay, well, so many people got it right, including Glennis, Odin, and Felipe. But our winner tonight is Rodders, and if you want to know the answer, it's the Radium Beer Hall, of course.
Kay, thank you so much, and for looking after us. Simon looking after the desk, Ian looking after the videography, and more importantly, Llewelyn, thank you for coming to chat to us.
What a pleasure.
We do this every week between 6 and 7. Up next is the greatest show on earth. Good night. Ciao.
But there's something wrong, and I can't hurt him bad. There must be so much love in my heart that it would tear me apart. And I know, although you couldn't see,